So, welcome classic rock fans to another episode of Worst to Best or Best to Worst. For today I want to talk about a band that have kind of been with me since my burgeoning teen years, and that is Kiss. I remember seeing Kiss on, there used to be a programme over here in the UK called Entertainment USA, presented by Jonathan King. I remember seeing Kiss on that, and I think they played the I Love It Loud video, but I was absolutely mesmerised by them and have loved them ever since. But I must admit, Kiss are kind of a bit of a dirty secret for me. You know, I do all these videos and vlogs and classic album reviews about artists like Bob Dylan and Jethro Tull, Pink Floyd, King Crimson, whatever. Bands and artists that have got some, shall we say, intellectual gravitas. So Kiss is kind of like a guilty secret or an illicit affair that I sneak off to every now and again, but never tell anyone about. But anyway, I must admit, I do like doing these best to worst videos because it gets you thinking about your own relationship with an artist and their music. It gets you to kind of reassess it, kind of where you are now, and think about how you would rank their albums. It's at this juncture that I usually emphasise that this is merely my opinion, so you don't need to burn me in effigy if I say something you don't agree with. I've merely ranked the albums in according to my own personal preferences. So best to worst, let's start with the first one, or last one, shall we say. For me, we start at number 20. At the bottom of the pile is 1989's Hot in the Shade. For me, this album doesn't particularly work for me. It really is a lot of polished sort of overdubs and things like that they've tried to do because it's cheaper, I think, but also to give the album a rawer sound. I think they were trying to drift away from the very polished and sort of commercial sound that they achieved on the Crazy Nights album. I believe it was Eric Carr's last album. I think Tommy Thayer also contributes a couple of tunes to this album, but for me it just doesn't work. Number 19 is 1981's The Elder. Now this album is, for some, has got some real cult status. A lot of people really love this album. For me it's an ill-conceived concept that doesn't particularly work that well. It's got some nice moments. I think The Oath is a great tune, great track, but far too many strings, far too many oboes for a Kiss album in my opinion. Number 18, the next one on the list is Carnival of Souls. Of course, Carnival of Souls is actually the title of an independent horror film from about 1962. Yes, 1962. Obviously, I suppose Gene Simmons had some influence in titling this album, I suspect. But for me, it's an album that was abandoned. Its release was abandoned when the reunion tour was announced. But it feels to me as if they're just trying, with this album, just trying to jump on the sort of grunge bandwagon. And for that reason it's quite low on my list. Number 17 is Crazy Nights. Again, another sort of departure from that sort of hard rock Kiss sound. They've gone for a more radio friendly vibe to it, lots of keyboards and things like that. Nevertheless, that isn't to say there isn't some great songs on this album. Crazy Nights is anthemic, of course. Reason to Live is also on there as well, although it's not a personal favourite of mine. I do like the song. I love the Bruce Kulick's wonderful guitar playing, opening Bang Bang, Bang Bang You, sorry. And I think Bruce Kulick's contribution to Kiss should never be underplayed. He's an outstanding musician. And Hell or High Water, which is another great song. I think it's sung by Simmons. So it's lifted up by some really good tunes, but there's a bit of syrup on there as well. So that comes in at number 17. At number 16 is the Animalized album, 1984. Now, it's an album that I do have a soft spot for, because I actually saw them play on this tour. And it's an album, obviously, that Mark St. John plays on, the only album he plays on. And he wasn't fit, really, for the tour. I think that's where Bruce Kulick replaces him. But nevertheless, it's got the wonderfully anthemic Heaven's on Fire. Thrills in the Night is a great song. What it doesn't have is a lot of Gene Simmons. I like Gene Simmons singing some songs, that kind of demon persona that he brings to the mix at his Kiss. And I think the Animalized album suffers for him pursuing his movie career rather than focusing on the band. So that's why this album sort of slips down a bit for me. Number 15 is the Unmasked Album, an album that was seen as a real betrayal as far as many Kiss fans were concerned. It was certainly a departure from the Kiss sound and concept of what Kiss should be, or what they once were. But for me, it seems to be a natural progression from where they were with Dynasty or Dynasty, however you pronounce it. It's certainly a very poppy sounding album, and credit where credit's due. There's some great tunes on here. One thing I will say, I think Stanley and Simmons are underrated in terms of songwriters. They certainly seem to have a good ear for a great melody, and that certainly comes to the fore when they start drifting away from the harder rock aspects of what Kiss were to this. That being said, this was obviously the band were, falling apart at this juncture. Peter Criss had already gone, I think. He doesn't play on this album. Anton Fig plays drums on this album. And, of course, the song Shandy was a massive hit down under. But for me, it's at number 15. Number 14, I've put Sonic Boom. I love the cover of this album. The guy that did the cover of this album also did Rock and Roll Over, and it's kind of a tribute to that. I suppose for me why I don't love this album is because I think by then my interest in Kiss was purely retrospective, and I wasn't that open-minded to new material. Plus I also just generally felt this album seemed to display that Kiss were kind of past their best, I think. So for this album, for me, languishes at number 14. Number 13 on my list is 2012's Monster. A good, again, as I said, of Sonic Boom, it's good, solid Kiss fare, really. But for me, after the reunion tour, this just sort of felt like Kiss by numbers, really, in many respects. And it's not an album that I listen to a great deal. I play it now and again. It's got some great tunes on it. I love that sort of hologram sleeve they did with it as well. Number 12 comes the Asylum album, which was 1985. I listened to it recently, and it sounds a lot better than I remember it. It's actually really quite good. Some wonderful playing by Bruce Kulick, and Eric Carr is outstanding on this album. I could well do without Tears Are Falling, though, to be honest with you. But it's quite a good album, one that I wouldn't be ashamed to have in my Kiss collection. Number 11 is the Psycho Circus album from 1998, an album that featured the original lineup, allegedly. I'm not sure how much the Ace and Pete actually contribute to this album, but very little, I suspect. But it was nice to hear Ace singing on a Kiss album once more. I must admit that kind of lifts it up for me. And I think Peter Criss only plays drums on about one of the songs. But one thing that this album actually does do is it actually demonstrates that Paul, Gene, Ace and Peter could not work together. But it is up there because it has that kind of... I just have a soft spot for this album. Biggest regret of mine is I didn't go and see them on this tour. Number 10 is the Dynasty album, 1979, the disco years, where Kiss kind of metamorphosised into Kool and the Gang. This album has a lot to recommend it as far as I'm concerned. I love Ace Frehley's version of the Stones number 2000 Man. I love the other songs that he sings on this record. There's a song on here called Magic Touch, which I think is absolutely an outstanding Paul Stanley number, with a beautiful and sublimely beautiful bridge within it, which I don't think Stanley would probably struggle to sing these days. However, it is kind of a departure from what I think Kiss should be, so for me it languishes at number 10. Number 9 is the Revenge album from 1992. This is really a jewel in the Kiss crown. If you haven't heard this album, I recommend that you give it a spin. It really is good. Stanley and Simmons are outstanding on this record. I think there is a contribution from Eric Carr. I think it was a track that he'd played on, which they actually put it on this album. The album is actually, in fact, dedicated, quite rightly so, to Eric Carr, Kiss's best drummer, in my opinion. But yes, Revenge from 1992 is number 9. It's a really, really good album. Number 8 is the debut Kiss album from 1974. This is the album that kind of sets the ball rolling. It has all those sort of classic Kiss tunes that form the staple of any sort of Kiss gig, really. You know, Strutter, Deuce, Firehouse, Black Diamond, Cold Gin, they're all on there. It really deserves to be higher, on my list. The only thing that lets this album down for me is it's rather emaciated and weak production. Kiss were a very powerful band at this time live, but this sounds, the production on this album does not do them justice at all. It's my hope that they'll go back to the original master tapes and produce a special edition of this album and kind of beef it up a bit. And kind of make it sound like Kiss should have sounded like. Of course, we realise that as soon as the Alive album came out, though the 3 albums that precede the Alive album do sound rather weak in comparison. Number 7 is 1975's Dressed to Kill. As I said of the first album, the same applies here, I think. It's an album that's kind of let down by its production values. Not a lot of money was spent on this band, I think, at this juncture. But nevertheless, it's got that wonderful iconic cover with them standing in suits Bill or Coyne had lent them or bought for them so they could pose for the cover. But it's got some real sort of muscular numbers on, like She and Rock Bottom, I think, is on here as well. But it's it's a good solid classic Kiss album. Number 6, I've put Rock and Roll Over from 1976. I love the cover of this album. The cover was by Michael Dorrit, I don't know if I've pronounced his name correctly, who later goes on to do the Sonic Boom cover. It's an album that contains some really sort of weighty, sort of muscular sort of Kiss numbers, like Making Love, that wonderful opening guitar riff, I Want You, which is a live favourite, and sort of the wonderful song sung by Peter Criss, Hard Like Woman. Yes, so Rock and Roll Over comes in at number 6. Number 5 is Love Gun, the first Kiss album to feature a vocal performance by Ace. And of course Shock Me is kind of his signature tune, isn't it? Great album. I love the album sleeve. I think the guy who did the album sleeve also did the Destroyer sleeve. I love that sort of cartoony sort of mythology surrounding Kiss, and that really comes to the fore in this artwork. It's got the rather creepy Christine 16 on it. It's also got some great production by Eddie Kramer, and I believe it also came with a sort of a pull-out sort of gun, cardboard gun, with the original release of this record. So yep, Love Gun's pretty high up there, isn't it? 4, I've put Hotter Than Hell. I love this album. This album has a certain mystique to it. It's certainly odd in many ways. Some very sort of weird songs on, like Going Blind, which I love, incidentally, but nevertheless it's a strange bit of tunage. But also Strange Ways, which is written by Ace, sung by Peter. That comes across as sort of hard rock psychedelia in many respects, to my mind anyway. I don't like the cover. That kind of Japanese manga-influenced artwork just doesn't do it for me. Interestingly, of course, Ace had busted his face up in a car crash when they were taking the photographs for this record, so they had to have his makeup superimposed later on. But yeah, Hotter Than Hell, number 4. Number 3 is 1983's Lick It Up, a wonderful album with the band producing. They could fire on all cylinders, even without the makeup. A great heavy rock album with real attitude. It's interesting, they've got some wonderful guitar work from Vinnie Vincent. I often wonder if Vinnie Vincent hadn't been so difficult to get along with, how his relationship with Kiss's music might have evolved from this album. Food for thought, I guess. Anyway, definitely number 3 is Kiss's Lick It Up. What a great album that is. Number 2 is my all-time favourite Kiss album, almost, and that is Creatures of the Night. It was an album that was made when they had their backs to the wall in many respects. They really needed something that was a manifesto of who they were, especially coming out of the elder years and the disco poppy type thing they were doing with Dynasty and Unmasked. They really needed this album to be a statement of intent, and it's a real return to their hard rock roots. It's iconic cover, which has that sort of brooding, menacing sort of Kiss persona oozes from it. It's just everything about this album is plus as far as I'm concerned. Do check out the classic album review I've done on this very album. So number 2, Creatures of the Night. That brings us to my all-time number 1, which simply by deduction, really, you can work out that it's 1976's Destroyer. Destroyer was the first Kiss album that I bought, and it's one that made a massive impression upon me, from the opening of Detroit Rock City straight into that iconic riff, which segues beautifully into King of the Nighttime World, and those voices, shrill voices before God of Thunder, and the rather sort of peculiar Great Expectations, Sweet Pain. This album just oozes quality, and it's the production values as well. The quality of the playing was top notch on this album for Kiss. Much credit has to be given to Bob Ezrin. I think they got a world class producer for this album, and it's an album that just oozes quality. But I think in terms of the production or working with Kiss, Bob Ezrin took absolutely no prisoners whatsoever. Paul Stanley's gone on record as saying it was like a musical boot camp, but we came out a lot smarter for it. So my number 1 is Kiss Destroyer. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please click like and subscribe, share this video, check out the Facebook page. But more importantly, please do keep listening.